address by the Speaker.
Good morning, honourable members and all others present, and welcome. And a very warm welcome also to those listening to this live broadcast of this first Minister's Question Time, held in the Council Chamber in the Castle, Jamestown. Thank you, honourable members, for your enthusiasm for this new activity starting. And I am aware the public also is looking forward to regular Minister's Question Time. Minister's Question Time is regulated by standing orders and a number of rules. Perhaps it is fair to say that some teething difficulties can be expected in early meetings. When in practice Minister's Question Time was held applying Order 9 in its entirety, elected members felt that the limitation imposed by Rule 6, which only allows one supplementary question for each substantive question, prevented thorough exploration of the issue raised and initial response given. I understand that elected members intend to propose formal amendments to standing orders with regard to Minister's Question Time, but not before their provisions have been trialled further, as other issues may be identified that require review and change. What would be appreciated is interaction, and therefore elected members would welcome feedback from the public. However, at the formal Legislative Council meeting held 24th March, the resolution determined that Rule 5 and Rule 6 of Order 9 of standing orders be suspended for the duration of the Minister's Question Time scheduled for today. In accordance with Order 9, Rule 3 of standing orders, the Chief Minister was notified of the topic of business to be transacted. That topic is progress made in achieving the St. Helena Government's vision and strategy dated April 2022 to March 2025. The Chief Minister acknowledged receipt of the topic, and non-ministers have framed their questions. All of the questions prepared by non-ministers for today are addressed to the Chief Minister. However, because the topic chosen is very broad, and because parts of it may be cross-cutting or relate directly to activities undertaken within a particular portfolio that other ministers are in charge of, another minister may decide they would like to answer the question and can indicate their intention by switching on their red light. Because Rule 5 and Rule 6 of Order 9 of standing orders have been suspended for this meeting, it is likely that additional supplementary questions will be asked. The duration of Minister's Question Time, starting from the first question, is 1 hour. May we have the first question, please?
The Honourable Dr. Corinda Essex.
What I should have said was, sorry, you have the order paper and probably would have said it on there. The questions have been listed in alphabetical order, but will be selected randomly for response at the meeting. So I think Dr. Essex was called.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honourable Chief Minister tell this Council what policy changes and or new policies have been introduced since the last general election that are aimed at retaining the local workforce and encouraging St. Helenians currently working overseas to return?
Honourable Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, everyone. And thank the Honourable Dr. Essex for her question. Obviously, there's a lot of work going on, and I think it's necessary to also point out here that the Minister's vision, along with the SHG strategy, was our vision for our 4 years. And as a number of people will remember, our priority for year 1 was to focus a lot of our time and resources on health. With that said, there's lots of other work that has been going on in the different portfolios, and in respect of retaining the local workforce, have looked at this to continue the trajectory of trying to improve our minimum wage. We have tax working groups set up that are looking at the actual tax regime, because I know there's quite a lot of people who are concerned that the 7,000 that's set isn't adequate, and I know the tax working group is working on that. In respect of the biggest one, I think, that we're working on that has been out for its first round of consultation, but it's due to go out again soon after consultation with the wider council, and ministers have had a time to look at it, is our immigration policy. That will hopefully be the catalyst for a lot of the other things that we wish to bring out in respect of making land available, obviously looking at the disposal assets, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chief Minister. Honourable Dr. Corinda Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Chief Minister for her response. Will the Honourable Chief Minister state whether or not the likely impact upon the issue of retaining saints or attracting them back to the island is routinely taken into consideration when making policy decisions?
Honourable Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's part of our vision, our priorities for the 4 years was always to talk about our people and the importance of our human resource. So yes, every policy decision that's taken does consider retaining the people on island and indeed trying to attract others back. As much as we'd like to do this, at times it is very, very difficult when we think about the resources we have. I know that Minister Brooks would also like to make a comment here as well.
Honourable Minister Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my honourable friend for the question. And just to follow on from Julie, what we're doing within our portfolio with development policies is looking at the stamp duty policy, and that is encourage people who doesn't own properties to have an extended discount on the current policy. That is all aimed at trying to attract returning saints to live on St. Helena. As members know, one of the important things for a St. Helenan is to own their own house, and this policy is trying to make that more achievable for those saints living abroad and on island. We're also developing the land or the property purchase and disposable policy. Again, this will help streamline the process of adequate land on the island being sort of on the market, so that people who are interested in buying land to develop housing and as well as start a family and stuff like that would have a better access of doing that and a more clearer process of doing that. So those are two policies that will help with encouraging things to return. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister for Treasury, Structure and Sustainable Development. Honourable Robert Midwinter. Before that, Honourable Martin Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just to a more sort of holistic comment on the back of Mark's comment. I've spoke about this before, but all policies that we are trying to push through, especially in line with that, it's about creating opportunity. So sometimes we go straight to the source, but to attract people back to St. Helena, we need to create opportunity. One of the best examples of this is when Bassel Reed was built in the airport. We saw increase in capital, we saw increase in wages, we saw just a general increase in opportunity, which then spilled over to a general increase in disposable income. I use that as a benchmark in some cases to see what can happen if we do stimulate the economy to something like that. We probably won't have a major project of that sort, but we need to stimulate the economy in all different areas so we lift and create opportunity. I think that's the attraction back to St. Helena. So sometimes going straight to source is not always the best aspect. We need to look at all of the policies around that creates opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister for Health and Social Care. Honourable Robert Midwinter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In terms of encouraging St. Helenians currently working overseas to return, Is she able to confirm that her government is intending to extend the first-time buyer discounts for Crown land to Saints living and working overseas?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable
Thank you,
Brooks.
Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the honourable member for his question. As I said before, this policy is still in draft form, but I'll be pleased to say that in the draft form, we are looking at extending the first-time buyer criteria to those living overseas, not just on Ascension and the Falklands, but also in the UK.
Thank you, Honourable Minister for Treasury, Infrastructure and Sustainable Development. Any further questions on that one? If not, can we go to the next question, please?
The Honourable Gillian Brooks.
The Honourable Jolyon Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honourable Chief Minister tell this Council what policies have been developed to encourage local food production in view of sustaining the island with fresh produce and addressing food security?
Honourable Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Honourable Gillian Brooks for the question. I will obviously turn to Minister for ENRP to go into detail here, but obviously food security is key and is one of the priorities in our vision. This is something that we've been working towards over the last year, and as many will know, there was some EDIP funding to the tune of $380,000 that was approved to address food security and how we can make more land available for farming to take place. I will allow the Minister for ENRP to elaborate.
Thank you very much, Honourable Christine Sipiu, Minister for Environment, Natural Resources and Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do feel I'm repeating myself, Mr. Speaker, because I only gave an update before Malichko last week about the agriculture sector. So I do apologise to all listeners if they are hearing something that was mentioned last week. So, Mr. Speaker, work is in progress within the agriculture sector, analysing and trying to inform options for developing a 5-year agriculture strategy. And as I said in last week's meeting, that a member of our council, Honourable Robert Midwinter, sits on this the strategy working group, as well as a representation from the Chamber of Commerce, so that we are working together for the island to continue the island's contribution to the St. Leonard's economy and also food requirements as food security as mentioned. As the Chief Minister mentioned, yes, that we managed to obtain some funding through the EDIP program in trying to address the government's estate with fencing, land clearance, and of course we have to recognise that £380,000 does sound like a lot of money, but when you try to put it across the sector with various elements of the agriculture, it isn't a lot, so we only can do certain parts. And I must say that the targets that were set for this financial year, we are on target for that. And as in our constituency meetings just recently, I mentioned to the public that for the next round, which next financial year, we'll be looking at the poultry unit. So, like I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, I feel I'm repeating myself because I only gave an update last week.
Not a bad idea to repeat yourself sometimes. Any questions from anybody? Honourable Gillian Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister Sipiu. You spoke about the agriculture strategy group, yeah? Can you just, I may have missed it, but is there a sort of time frame as to when you're looking to have a sort of strategy in place, a time frame?
Honourable Christine Sipiu.
At the moment, Mr. Speaker, I'm unable to give a time frame. I'm not sure that Honourable Rob Midwinter, who is part of the group, be able to help our friend here as to say what their targets are, because I haven't had an update from this working group as yet.
Thank you very much. Honourable Dr. Corinne Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honourable Chief Minister, and I'm addressing the question to her, but she's welcome to delegate if she wishes to do so, state what progress is being made regarding review of the labour subsidy policy for farmers?
Thank you. Honourable Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, that is quite a detailed policy that hasn't come to us as Cabinet nor Executive Council, because this is something that would be addressed in the advisory board of ENRP, so I'll hand it over to Minister Scipio.
Thank you very much. Honourable Christine Scipio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just to recollect about in a formal legislative council meeting a while ago, that question was raised by my honourable friend, and a draft policy has been drafted, and I have had conversations with my honourable friend about the details of that policy as well. At the moment, we're looking at what are the financial implications, and because it's going to have an impact on our finances if we're going to go and try to assist individuals in helping. When I say assist individuals, I talk about individuals who are unemployed, because in that policy was looking at unemployment. We had discussions with cash, careers, access St. Helena, because we looked at what people were on their list as being unemployed and the criteria or the caliber of the people. So we looked at that, and we noticed that if we're going to move forward with the labour subsidy policy, it will have financial implications on our budget. And because we don't have a budget at the moment, discussions are, we do have a budget, I should say, in total, so that stand to be corrected, but we haven't gone into the detail. The discussions are still to be made known, because as Honourable Mark Brooks made the announcement last week that we now have the funding, discussions need to be held as to say how we're going to divide the pie up, and then if this can be accommodated, like it mentions financial implications, I can't say it's going to be implemented because of the financial constraints.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Honourable Robert Midwinter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before I go into my supplementary question, just to confirm that, yes, I am on that particular working group. It's only been established very recently. We've only had 2 meetings so far, so it's very early days. But I will endeavour to give colleagues regular updates as to how that strategic working group is progressing. Mr. Speaker, can the Chief Minister confirm that the existing subsidies and tax reliefs that are currently provided to the farming community, such as water subsidy and lower rate of import duty on animal feeds, will remain in place for the incoming tax year?
Honourable Christine Scipio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and sorry, Chief Minister, I jumped the gun and put my light on to answer it. So at the moment, there is no intention to remove that.
Honourable Colvin Pinter. I think I may have jumped the gun a bit there, and if you don't mind, Honourable Ronald Coleman, I'll allow Honourable Carl Schroeder to ask this question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since we started talking about subsidies, are there any plans, or is it still being looked at, to maybe look at fuel subsidy for farmers and better financial offerings for farmers for affordable finance, as previously provided by ESH?
Honourable Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm standing at the right time and not jumping someone else. I think, Honourable Colesborough, thanks for the question. I think we're in a bit of a delay at the moment because, as Minister Sipius just said, the budget has been announced, but we haven't started negotiations to talk about the allocation of that budget. Depending on how that is divided, then I wouldn't want to come and say that that's something that will definitely happen, but it is all things that will be considered. And when we start weighing up the priorities, we'll need to see how we share the pie.
Thank you very much. Honourable Ronald Coleman, do you still wish to ask your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want to ask, is the help that is proposed or being drawn up will help all farmers, as the Egypt project only help farmers who are farming on Crown land at this moment in time?
Thank you very much. Honourable Chief Minister first.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate that the funding helps with Crown land. It is very difficult, I have to admit, to be able to support people with their private land. We can't be putting structures on private land, and it's very difficult to be able to manage and control that, because in the past, I know, especially with Crown land, someone has potentially had 2 acres of land and they're either not using it or they're just using a small portion of that. So at least if it's Crown land, we can put control measures in place. We can't really see a return on our investment if we're looking at private land. I'm not suggesting it won't be, but we will consider the Crown lands first, because that is the larger parts. A lot of help, as you've rightly said, has gone into private lands through Enterprise St. Helena, but it's also about the responsibility of businesses and farmers as well to constantly invest in their land and their businesses.
Thank you very much. Honourable Martin Henry, do you still wish to ask your
Yes, thank you,
question?
Mr. Speaker. I wanted to comment on one of the earlier questions, but it's just an overview, and I think there's something for the whole council that we need to look at. While the question asks what is addressing food security, I think we need to decide first what is food security. Is having potatoes food security? Is having frozen pizza food security? I think before we can start to just throw a buck over what is food, addressing food security, we may have to decide what is food security. Give you an example. There is enough grain grown in the world to feed 13.1 billion people. Yet we feed 80% of it to the animals than to feed 15% of the world's population, leaving 1 billion people starving. So food security is just a very big statement, and I think as a whole council we need to decide what is food security before we can continue to go further and address this question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much for that. Honourable Rosemary Bargo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just rise on a point of information?
You may.
Early days of council, when we just started, we had went out to the ex-ADA fields to have a look at the water situation there, and was found to be inadequate, to help water all the fields. So my question is, what is the progress on the ability to provide farmers with adequate water supply in the ex-ADA fields? And sorry, to add on this point of information, I know ENRD was working with Connect St. Helena on this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Honourable Christine Scipio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my understanding that my honourable friend Rosemary Bargo has recently been given an update from our officers in respect of this, and from the update that you had just recently, probably in the last 10 days, I don't have anything further to add.
Thank you very much, Honourable Rosemary Bargo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just say something again? Whilst I know I have the update, I believe our listening public would like to know exactly what's being done. Thank you.
I do take your point. Honourable Minister for Environment, Natural Resources and Planning, please.
So it was a statement that my honourable friend made. Yes, so my understanding is that we did look at the water flow, the pumps. My understanding at that time that Connect St. Helena, because of other things that were happening in the department, that they were unable to give full attention in providing the expertise in how the water pumps and everything else. As my understanding was that everybody was feeding off the same flow, and they were looking at how we could change that so that there would be difficulty in getting the water for that. My honourable friend is nodding her head here to confirm that what I'm saying is correct. So we are still working on it. It's just that we're not there just yet.
It's good to see nodding heads. Thank you very much. Questions from anybody? Honourable Andrew Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this sort of question's original subject of local produce and food security,
Yes.
would any of the ministers be able to provide an update on what steps this government is taking to ensure access to local fish products, which are of course another key element of local food production?
Thank you very much. Honourable Chief Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is a very difficult question for me because I have to declare an interest first and foremost. and I'm not entirely sure if any other minister can assist me here. I think all I'd like to say from a ministerial position is £500,000 was invested into the fish factory, and that was to ensure that we would have fresh fish available to the local market, and that we would see the recommencement of offshore fishery, the exploratory fishing, and of course scientific data that is really, really important if we are to consider or take into consideration a revisit of the current quota. Beyond that, I can tell you that there's no additional funding that's gone into fishing. But that said, there is still this fuel subsidy that continues for all fishermen who are registered as commercial fishermen, and they get that through Solomon and Company, so it's left to the individual fishers to be able to set that up through Solomon and Company. So that's as far as we've gone thus far.
Thank you very much. Honourable Martin Henry.
Thank you for your question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to add to the Chief Minister, the Health Protection Board met as recently as yesterday. Yesterday was Wednesday? No, Wednesday. That's how days going at the moment, Mr. Speaker, sorry. And what, on the other end of what the Chief Minister has just said, we have now looked at the fish ordinance, and we have decided that because of a number of issues with the ordinance, that we will ask, and we will come to this council to ask, could we do a full review of the fish ordinance, and to ask this council what do they want to see in terms of sales of fish to the island of St. Helena, and then we can write an underlying ordinance that governs that and protects our population's health. So a full review, I think, is now necessary. But it was only decided on Wednesday, and I have not come to this council even to put it on our agenda yet.
Understood. Thank you very much. Honourable Mark Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I'll just help my ministers here by just adding in something else that recently has taken place to encourage more sales of fish, not just locally but for export. As my honourable friend will be aware, recently a local put together a business proposal for a cannery in Rupert's Valley to export into a well-known high street chain in the UK. As a government, we made that facility available on the rental market so that he could have the opportunity to operate his business from a location that was ideal for that type of business. Also, because fishing is in the SCDP, he would have incentives within the SCDP for different ways in trying to set up his business. One of those would include, obviously, import duties on goods that would support the business, and also there is another method of applying for PIC or approved investment status, which will allow any individuals who meet the objectives of the SCDP to have a reduction rate on the import duties on any equipment or materials brought to the island. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're still keeping in line with what was asked in the beginning. You want to go and get your papers? Thank you very much. Honourable Martin Henry.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I just want to rise on a point of clarification because there's very close ordinance. The ordinance I was referring to is the Fish and Fish Products Ordinance, and not
All right,
the Fisheries Ordinance.
Thank you for clarifying that. Have we sort of exhausted this question now? Okay, I'll allow another question or another comment if you like.
Yes, just for the benefit of our listeners, Mr. Speaker,
Thank you very much.
if I may, because my honourable friend Andrew Turner talk about fish products, and just to say that early this week I had confirmation that the registrar of shipping, because we talked about offshore licensing and exploratory licenses, that the registrar of shipping advised me earlier this week that they're still waiting on an application for registrating vessels, and once that registration has gone through that process, then we will consider issuing a commercial license, but we can't do that until the other processes have been followed.
Thank you very, very much. Next question, please.
Rosemary Bargo.
The Honourable Rosemary Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honourable Chief Minister tell this Council what progress has been made with the review of the education ordinance?
Honourable Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Honourable Rosemary Bargo for her question. I think when we look at education, we are one of the only portfolios that probably just has one huge ordinance. That ordinance pretty much tells us and guides us on everything that we do within education. So it is something that we're looking at, is reviewing the education ordinance. It is in its infancy stage. So I know that the portfolio director is having discussions with her heads, if I can put it that way, and then but all schools have been asked to have a look at the ordinance and decide areas that they feel needs to change because of their, obviously, they work with the ordinance on a daily basis. This, I think, to be honest with you, most of our ordinances needs to be changed to reflect the change in committee systems to be reflective of the ministerial government. So that's being done as well. But the biggest thing that we need to do is ensure that our policies that obviously sit with the ordinance is up to date before we start changing the ordinances. So it's a huge piece of work.
Thank you very much. Honourable Rosemary Bargo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chief Minister. Can you also tell me then, is any work's been underway on policies? What has the policies been, like works, and what extent policies has been implemented to ensure goals are met within the priority area altogether better for children and young people within the vision and strategy?
Thank you very much. Honourable Chief Minister.
So I think, again, this comes back to what I said earlier. A lot of our focus this year has been on the health. Education is obviously doing the work that they need to do. Policies at the moment, I think the key one, which I think everybody will be pleased to know, is antisocial behaviour. We're looking at behavioural issues, how we can best deal with that within schools. That's the whole 4 schools, because I know that teachers are quite concerned about their safety as well, because although a minority, there's quite a few incidents that is quite stressing, I would have to say. So the need for multi-agency working is key on that as well, not just for antisocial behaviour, but behaviour in general. Policies we're looking at also is trying to, inclusion is another one when we look at educational needs and disabilities. The sad thing for most, especially the primary schools, is the ability to accommodate these things. If you all know, the main place that we do most of this work is kind of spread out. So we have some going on in Carnarvon Court, and Olive Cottage is being used as inclusion, and it's not really ideal. Hence, we are looking at the primary school review, which I mentioned in our constituency meetings. So whilst we have the primary school review, we'll be looking at how we can best cater for a lot of these issues, and that will help to inform the policy also.
Thank you very much. Honourable Rosemary Bargo.
Thank you, and thank you for informing the public on this as well, Chief Minister.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on that? Honourable Robert Midwinter.
Mr. Speaker, can I ask the Honourable Chief Minister, in the absence of the maintenance element of student finance, will she give consideration to some element of SHG finance?
Thank you very much. Honourable Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Honourable Midwinter for your question. Again, I think it would be very foolish of me to give that kind of confirmation. The budget hasn't been allocated at this present time. Maintenance loans, I can tell you already that there's no way that as education is going to be able to afford the entire maintenance loan. We've made that very clear to the students and their parents that there's no way we'll be able to facilitate that. Hopefully, we'll have somewhere in the region of 6 or 7 students going this year. And when you look at what that will equate to in maintenance loans, it is quite significant. We are hoping that we can give something, but until the budget is allocated, I wouldn't want to give that commitment. With that said, though, I would also like to highlight the offering being put forward by the Bank of St. Helena, whereby students and parents can access £5,000 per year for the next 3 years.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So just in terms of time, because the public, I think, probably is, I hope they are listening and will interact with us on that and will provide some feedback. We're halfway through now, since we started at 4 minutes past 10, and now, yeah, we're nearly 25 to 11. So just in case of timing, because we need to, you know, make certain everybody tries to get their questions in, we're about halfway through. So thank you very much. Next question, please.
The Honourable Robert Midwinter.
The Honourable Robert Midwinter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honourable Chief Minister tell this Council what steps have been taken thus far towards achieving the stated aim within the strategic vision that the St. Helena Government wants a tax reform regime which encourages investment, is progressive, fair and equitable?
Thank you very much. Honourable Mark Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his question. As the Honourable Member will know, there is tax regimes built in the SEDP, which will help businesses that qualify under that scheme. But what we've been doing so far, Mr. Speaker, since we came into office, is we've developed a beneficial ownership policy, which is an important part of compliance. And that is now sitting with the AG's chambers, ready to be drafted into ordinance. We've also employed a financial services development manager for the first time ever in St. Helena government, and that is looking at financial tax regimes, which is an important part of building our revenues. As part of this government, is one of our higher priorities as well. We're working with the bank to strengthen their tax regime so that they can increase their products and services, not just for St. Helenians, but also for investors. And we are working, the latest thing that we're doing, we're working on a DAO policy that will help strengthen or increase the company's register of companies to allow new, unique and businesses to operate here, but not in the general sense as in relocating here. It is just a digital presence on the island, which is something that we are keen to move towards because it doesn't take up any of the resources, the land, and so on the island. But it does, if it's successful, it does allow new revenue to be collected through the company's register. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Robert Midwinter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Minister Brooks for his response. Noting that we were told in this House last Friday that no consideration will be given to increasing the basic rate of income tax threshold before 2024-25, can he say what tax reforms are actually planned for the coming tax year?
Honourable Mark Brooks.
So, as I said a few weeks ago, we have re-established the Tax and Revenue Working Group. Mr. Speaker, this was re-established after a gap of not having a substantial chief economist in post, and that economist or chief economist is leading on some works looking at tax reforms and tax regimes. So far, we're just looking at the tax collected through duty, but we are, or I know, the Tax and Revenue Working Group is working on a whole raft of different tax regimes to be put forward to the Minister for recommendation to take forward to APSCO and finally on to Legislative Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Robert Midwinter.
Mr. Speaker, and I again thank the Honourable Minister for his response, but can you confirm that those tax reforms, are any of those likely to come into play in the forthcoming tax year?
Thank you very much. Honourable Mark Brooks.
I can say a number of them would be considering coming forward in the next financial tax year, but there's a number of them that will need substantial amount of work done, and that probably won't be considered until the following financial tax year.
Thank you very much. Honourable Dr. Brenda Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honourable Minister confirm that the issue of child allowances is one that is being considered by the Tax and Revenue Working Group?
Thank you very much. Honourable Mark Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for her question. And I am pleased to confirm that the Tax and Revenue Working Group will be considering that as an option in the tax reforms as well.
Thank you very much. Honourable Rosemary Blanco.
Will the Honourable Minister elaborate on what he meant with working with the bank on strengthening their tax regime?
Thank you. I can allow that. Honourable Mark Brooks.
Mr. Speaker, I can't get in too much detail. I mean, that is why we employed a financial services development manager. But I think as a government and as a jurisdiction, we need to strengthen our AML or anti-money laundering regulations, and also KYC, know your customer. So that is where the beneficial ownership policy plays a big part in doing that. It is just basically trying to protect our borders from illegal transactions to do with all types of nasty stuff in the world, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Next question, please.
The Honourable Andrew Turner.
The Honourable Andrew Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honourable Chief Minister tell this Council, in your vision it says the development of our renewable energy and water security plans, which ensure we primarily protect our environment whilst delivering both resources at affordable prices. Can you say what plans have been put in place to achieve this goal?
Thank you very much, Honourable Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's known to many that renewable energy and water security has been on the agenda, not just for this government, but previous governments as well. It is something, I know it's not part of the question, but I think what we need to also reflect on here is, although we talked about the health being our primary area of focus this year, renewables is one of those as well. It is unfortunate because there's quite a lot of work and reports that needs to be compiled by the current provider who's connecting to Helena, obviously, to enable us to better understand what service delivery is like now. So if we talk about grid stability reports, all of these things are due to come. But from what I gather, and I will wait for Minister Sippy to probably tell you that the date I'm going to give now is not quite correct, but I know they needed some time to do that, and getting access to the consultants with that expertise hasn't been easy because everybody is just recovering since COVID, but I believe that they're hoping that the report on grid stability could be made available to us later in this calendar year. And then on top of that, we've been working, so the other big focuses for us is renewables, immigration, telecoms, and access. So immigration is one that we all know now is coming to the forefront again now. Renewables, Cloud Forest project is one of the biggest things that we are talking about at the moment, because the Cloud Forest project will focus on our water security, because it's the national peaks that has a high percentage of securing our water. So lots of work to be done in getting those reports done before we can really get down to the nitty-gritties of the renewable energy. But I'll ask Minister Sippy if there's anything, or indeed Minister Brooks, if there's anything additional they want to speak about in respect of any of those two topics.
Thank you very much. Honourable Mark Brooks, I think your light is on.
Yes, I think I'll just elaborate a little bit on a green energy policy, which myself and Minister Sippy is part of, or is working on as part of that green energy policy development group. So we started this work because obviously we know that the energy strategy, the current energy strategy can't be met, because the date when that energy strategy was supposed to have been implemented was 2022. Obviously now we're in 2023. That was mainly not achieved due to the termination of contract with PASH Global. So we have been sort of working with CANAC and the British government our support from the British government is coming mainly through Alfie Alshop, who was here recently as and don't ask me, Mr. Speaker, his full title, but we call him the infrastructure man because he deals with all the infrastructure stuff on the side, and he has a particular interest in renewable energy. So we have developed some options within this policy, but this is still at very early stage of work in progress, and it still hasn't been to advisory boards to formally endorse the policy. But there's a lot of more consultation that still needs to be done with this policy. But we are working towards doing working towards a policy that will inform a new energy strategy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister. Honourable Andrew Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand it's early days in the formation of this new policy, but is it still the intention of this government, or is it the intention of this government to go for 100% renewable energy on St. Helena?
Thank you very much. Honourable Mark Brooks.
In developing the policy, Mr. Speaker, it was quite obvious that a full 100% renewable energy strategy was unlikely to be achieved. So we've set some new targets within that policy. I would probably say, and I would just reiterate that the policy hasn't been approved yet. It's still in development, but we are looking at gearing towards 80% plus in the new policy for renewable energies, mainly through solar and wind.
Thank you very much. Honourable Martin Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and not to contradict Mr. Brooks, but I think it is for any government to try to work towards a 100% renewable energy policy. But however, whether that can be achieved in the term we have would be a debatable question. But working towards an 80% policy would be great. But we also must be well aware that that green technology is developing all the time. So we must not build a system that then stops there. We need to build a system that allows other technologies, when they become available, to just slot into that system and then take the project further. So it's important we integrate that into that system.
Thank you very much. I think you just clipped it, Mark Brooks. Minister Mark Brooks.
No, just to also agree with my Honourable Minister Henry, that yes, the policy options will look at different options. So as I just want to correct myself, we're looking at 80% plus. I think, sorry, Mr. Speaker, I'll just have a sip of water. I think we need to be realistic here, and always talking about 100% gives the perception that we will reach 100%. So I think set our goals where we can realistically reach, and then once we reach that target, we strive to improve on that from that point on. So that's what I would like to say.
Thank you very much. Honourable Carl Thrower.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So if it's 80%, what do you see as fueling the other 20%?
Thank you very much. Honourable Mark Brooks.
Policy has identified, Mr. Speaker, that we, as an island, will still need a certain amount of diesel generation within our energy strategy.
Thank you very much. Honourable Carl Thrower. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to just raise on a point of information.
Yes, okay.
It's very simple. If you burn biodiesel instead of normal diesel, you reach 100% instantly.
Thank you for that point of information. Any response to that? Honourable Mark Brooks.
I can just confirm that biodiesel has been discussed within the Energy Working Group.
Thank you very much. I think we've exhausted that question. Next question, please. Oh, hang on a second. Didn't see that red light. Minister Sibiu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted, we've talked about the renewables, but I just thought I'd address the water side of it, because the Honourable Andrew Turner did mention about water, and just to reinforce what the Chief Minister mentioned about the Cloud Forest project. And yes, one of the pillars of the Cloud Forest project is a water pillars of the Peaks implementation plan. And trying to build our resilience in our water supply. So I just wanted to confirm that. And also just to mention that I mentioned last week in former LegCo that there was a draft water resources management plan that was never adopted by St. Helena government, that has been reviewed by FCDO. I'm expecting to get some recommendations and the outcome of that review by the end of this month. And once that has been received, I haven't been told that there is any delays, but providing me with the outcome of that review. Once that review has been received, then the working group will be set up to look at the recommendations from FCDO. So with renewables and the water strategy, we are receiving some help, assistance from our expertise within FCDO, which we are so grateful for.
Thank you very much, and I think we now have exhausted the question. Next question, please.
The Honourable Ronald Coleman.
The Honourable Ronald Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Honourable Chief Minister tell this House what policies or procedures have been put in place since the adoption of the Minister's vision, which is helping to improve the quality of life for people who are struggling with the high cost of living to ensure that no one is left behind?
Thank you very much. Honourable Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Honourable Ronald Coleman for his question. I think we are all concerned about the high impacts of cost of living here on St. Helena, but dare I say, internationally. It's very difficult for us in St. Helena because, hence the reason why things like food security is so important, because we need to be more self-sustaining on St. Helena, because there's so much cost that impacts us because of global increases in prices. Our main source of funding, as we all know, is from the UK government, and you only need to switch on the TV to see how dire it is in the UK as well at this present time. Although, with many constraints that we're facing, we obviously put into place the cost of living options last year when the hike in fuel costs were introduced. So we obviously increased the IRB, and we also increased, there was two, Mark, IRB and BIP. Yes, sorry, Councillor Coleman. Yeah, so those were the two that we looked at there. Obviously trying to address access and telecoms and trying to make key things like telecoms and immigration and access to the island and renewables, all the key foundation elements that we look to as businesses and indeed residents of St. Helena. If we can address those, hopefully the cost of living for all will be reduced, and then we can look at, and as Minister Henry said, at more opportunities in respect of how we live, work and play here on St. Helena.
Thank you very much. Honourable Ronald Coleman.
Can I just ask, Mr. Speaker, how long is the cost of living options is in place for?
Thank you very much. Honourable Mark Brooks.
The cost of living policy has been endorsed up until the 31st of March 2023. Again, as we all know, the budget hasn't been allocated for 2023-24 yet, but that will be consideration taken when we do that work. Mr. Speaker, just to elaborate on what the cost of policy options was to look at what was implemented. That was to try and reduce the cost of energy. We did something with the shipping or the transport of cargo to reduce the cost on essential goods. And we also looked at the benefits system in trying to give a little bit more to the benefits to offset the cost of living. I think the other thing that we did, which seems like a lifetime ago now, but it was early in last year, was a review of the benefit system as a whole, when we moved the threshold from £3,000 to £4,000, and we also looked at reevaluating the household definition to encourage to take more people or to collect more people within that benefit system. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honourable Robert Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Chief Minister say how her ministerial team are able to introduce effective workforce-related policies which keep pace with inflationary and other cost of living pressures, when it would appear that the fit for the future reviews, for example nursing, are not shared with the relevant minister?
Okay, I think I can allow that. Honourable Chief Minister. Honourable Mark.
Sorry, I'll just
Henry
take that
instead.
question. The Fit for the Future pay policy, which I think what my honourable friend is referring to, is an internal policy which reviewed how pays relate to the back spine of the HR policy. So that's something which is operational at the moment, and that's something that we will have to review holistically when we look at pay increases, etc. I don't expect for a personal one-to-one discussion held with HR with regards to my analysis to be presented on my table. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any further questions?
Only to rise on a point of information, Mr. Speaker, in that when I asked in this House last Friday during the adjournment, I was actually told that the review had been done and that I should ask for a copy of the report, and I have since asked for a copy of that report and been told exactly what the Minister has responded. So just for that, for the public information.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And Honourable Ronald Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to ask that any policies going forward with helping the people to improve their quality of life, if they ensure that no one is left behind within these policies that they create.
Okay, thank you very much. Honourable Martin Henry. Okay.
I'd just like to rise on that point Mr. Ronald Coleman, Honourable Councillor Coleman just mentioned, which is the improvement of quality of life. So as a government, when we are trying to improve people's quality of life, as we sometimes have to do it ourselves, I distinguish in two different areas, which is needs and wants, and not necessarily it is what our population wants, is what they need. And if you look at yourself, sometimes it's the same thing. I'll give you an example. What does population, as I see it now, wants from a hospital perspective is speed dial appointments. That's a want. What we need is to be able to support our current population with some habits, etc., identified in the JSNA, to improve their quality of life. So we have to, as a council, and look at needs and wants, because sometimes what is wanted on the moment isn't necessarily what we need as an Ireland going forward and informing policy.
Okay, thank you. I am aware that we're sort of running out of time now, but Honourable Chief Minister.
So I'll make this one very quick, Mr. Speaker, but just to say, all policies are taken with the hope that no one is left behind, but it is individuals' responsibility as well to ensure that they engage and become part of policies. At times that is another case whereby the policies are there, but people don't come forward. So I'm sure most ministers can give examples of a policy that's introduced, but the uptake at times isn't great, and then this isn't available to me. So it's also about the education process of the policies being introduced.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that question has been exhausted as well now. The Honourable Call Thrower is always telling me his turn always comes last. And it's coming last again. But anyway, next question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Only 4 minutes left.
Okay,
Councillor.
so luckily it's only 1.5 lines. Will the Honourable Chief Minister tell this Council what SHG are doing to progress the island's data protection legislation in line with its vision?
Thank you very much. Honourable Chief Minister.
I feel like I'm running against the clock here now. Okay, so the data protection project stated key outputs, and these include the development of the data protection policy that considers the integration of the general data protection regulation principles, an action plan for the implementation of the policy and legislation to include templates for systems, processes, tools, procedures to ensure compliance relevant to each stakeholder, and there's loads of presentations at the moment going out in the public and stakeholder consultation. I think recently we will have all been treated to some input from visiting consultants who's working with our IT members, and obviously they are now in the midst of doing cybersecurity policy development and also doing the engagement and education to build awareness of the cybersecurity.
Thank you very much. Honourable Calthrower.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Simple question. Do you think we'll be ready for when the cable goes live on the 1st of January?
Right, simple question, simple answer, please.
Well, I think that just comes into what I just said at the end of making sure we get better quality of life for all, or we leave no one behind. I'm not suggesting that we'll be 100% ready. I think that would be a little bit over-optimistic to suggest so, but this is why community engagement is so important. I went to some of the workshops that was presented by Gareth Revel and team, and when you look at the numbers attending, it's not big, but then when you go to constituency meetings, you get asked, are we making our young people ready? I think for me, I would actually say the young people will probably be ready before some of us who don't attend those sessions and need it more than the young people.
Thank you very much for that. No further questions? So it seems like we got done on the hour, you know. And I know the public perhaps were timing us as well. Stand to be corrected. Thank you very much. Well, honourable members.
Closing remarks by the Speaker.
Well, thank you very much, honourable members. That concludes the first of the monthly ministers' question time. I hope you, both ministers and non-ministers, were able to take full advantage of this method of bringing the public up to date with important issues. And I hope that the public will provide feedback, which is so very important. So a lot of information came out today, didn't it? And I think the people asking the questions and also the people answering questions took, you know, full advantage of that. So let's hope it continues. This is the first meeting, of course, and who knows, as we go on, there's teething problems, maybe one or two teething problems today, but as we go on, we will fix all of that, and we will become more professional as we go on. Not to say it wasn't professional today, I thought it went rather well. I'd like to hear that from the public, if they will, please. So thank you all very much. Thank you. 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 Much. Thank you.